All right, I believe we're almost on time, so why not just start, eh? Hello and welcome to today's chat. I am going to be joined by two super smart cookies, but this is Tech London Advocates Future of Work Lunch and Learn Twitter Space. We call it Future Friday, you call it lunchtime. My name is Paul Armstrong. I am the CEO of Emerging Technology Advisory Hereforth, and I am your host for the next hour. Each month, I select one or two people to talk about a subject that's impacting the future of work, and this one's an important one. It's hybrid working. Today, we are joined by two bright sparks from Globalization Partners. That's with a Z, by the way, or a Z, the company that enables businesses to seamlessly hire teams around the world. Please say hello, Suzanne McVey, Marketing Head Honcho, and Nick Adams, who is VP of the EMEA region.
Hello, Paul. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's great to be with you here today. And Suzanne, hopefully you're there as well.
Yeah, I'm here.
The wonderful. Technology is working. Amazing. Welcome to the show, folks. Are you ready for a grilling on hybrid working?
Absolutely.
We are looking forward to this conversation, Paul.
I don't believe that for a second, Suzanne, but okay, we'll do it. Right, if you don't know who Tech London Advocates Future of Work are, lend me your ears. We are a global think tank that explores challenges and suggests practical developments on the future of work to help businesses succeed in the post-pandemic world and sort of pre-post-pandemic world, if that makes sense. If you want to join, tweet, DM or email me and I'll get you to the right people. Trust me, you want to be a part of what we're cooking up. There's lots going on. It's just going to be me and Suzanne and Nick speaking if you don't ask questions. So please do ask questions. If you'd like to ask one, just request the mic by clicking the mic icon on the bottom left. And please, for the love of hybrid working, be succinct. Equally, if you've got your mouth full or you're not up for mic duty today, just click the hashtag at the top. It should be in blue. And just let us know your questions and I will do that as well. So DM, however you get them to me, just get them to me. I'll do my best to get them answered and that sort of stuff. Okay. On with today's lunchtime session. Suzanne, big plug time. Tell me about Globalization Partners and what you do.
Well, thank you first, Paul, for inviting us to this great conversation today. So nice to meet you, everyone, and happy Friday. I am Suzanne McVey, EMEA Marketing Director here at Globalization Partners, and I am based in Dublin. So I started here on this fantastic GP journey about a year ago, and I've been fully remote the whole time. Let me tell you a little bit about Globalization Partners. So it's pretty simple. What we do is we allow you to hire anyone, anywhere, and very easily using our full stack global employment platform, just in a few clicks. So basically, you find the talent and we put your team member on our locally compliant payroll. And you leave all of the complexities and the headaches and everything that goes with that up to us so you can succeed faster.
Brilliant. Nicholas, anything that you want to add to that, or was that a very succinct plug?
No, I think Suzanne did a great job. I think, just another way to put it into layman terms is, when companies want to hire somebody abroad, the traditional route is to set up an entity and find a law firm to help with employment contracts, an accountant to do payroll. It can take time, and setting up a branch or subsidiary can take anywhere up to 2 years. If you're looking at places like Brazil, China. So what we've done is we've already got our entities there. We can hire anybody, anywhere in the world, in as little as 2 or 3 days.
I mean, that really surprised me when I went on the website and I saw 2 or 3 dads. What does that look like in reality for most people? They phone you up and they literally say like, "Hi, I need a team in Brazil. Like, I've got to be up there in 2 days." What does that process look like in reality for people? How easy is it?
It's very easy. We need to get a master services agreement in place, so we just agree the terms and conditions with the customer. Once we've done that, they tell us who it is they want to hire. We have developed locally compliant employment contracts in 187 countries. So quite simply, we just get in touch with the candidate. We ensure that the agreement mirrors everything that the customer wants to offer them in terms of pay and benefits. The professional, as we call them, they sign the agreement, they become our employee. We register them with the local tax authorities. We put the payroll in place. We assign them both statutory and supplementary benefits. And then they're our worker. And then we just assign them back to the customer. So it's very simple.
I love it. I think you can see why we chose them today to talk to us about hybrid working, folks. Nick, just before I let you go for a sec, how has the last 12 months been for you guys? I assume you've been busy around the clock, but also sweating bullets about changing, ways of working and things like that.
So I think when COVID hit, we were pretty much the same as every other business in March and April last year, we didn't know what the hell was going to happen. We actually did a lot of financial planning and modeling, thinking that our business may be heavily disrupted, that we may lose customers. We got it so wrong. Actually, and it's a terrible thing to say, but the pandemic has really embraced remote working, and that has meant for us as a company that helps with hiring cross-border, that actually companies were just coming to us and saying, right, well, this seems to be working. We've got our staff working remotely. They're not coming to the office. So we found some other people. They just happen to be outside of the country, but why not have them working remotely as well? So that's what's happened to us. We've gone absolutely through the roof. We've had to scale our own teams and systems incredibly to meet with the demand. But this is the new way of working. It's not just a phase or a fad. Hybrid working is probably the term of the day. So people will go back into the office for some of their time, but remote work from home is here to stay.
You mentioned hybrid. Let's get a definition going of hybrid working. What does it mean to you? It's not the same as flex, obviously.
Hybrid working is a mix of working remotely and also going into an environment where there's other people within your team. And the way we see that working in the future is really not sitting, just at a desk day-to-day staring at a screen. It's not about that. Hybrid working is going to be going in to meet your teams. So you'll have team meetings, you'll have strategy meetings, you'll be doing some social events, you'll be going out for lunches. So it's really those important get-togethers that you have to still have with a team. You can't forever just be remote. That's not going to be possible.
I'm with you. Suzanne, anything to add on that? Obviously, you're coming at it with a marketing lens for Globalization Partners. But you've worked remotely for a long time and that sort of stuff. When it comes to hybrid and that sort of thing, how is your team going to flex?
Just to add to what Nick said there, we kind of look at 4 hybrid models, or like when we're classifying hybrid, the first is partially remote. So it's a large headquarter and a remote workforce. And then the second would be like partially remote with multiple hubs. The third would be multiple micro hubs across geographies. And then lastly, partially remote with co-working flexible spaces. So that's how we look at the 4 hybrid models. And when we're looking at this as well, we're kind of looking at, so when you're going down the list, each of the costs of those locations are going down, and then the access to talent is increasing. So it's really kind of important, I guess, when you're looking at a hybrid model as well, to look and to see what are you looking for here. Are you looking for improved productivity, like which is the model that's right for you, or are you looking for a larger workforce across geographic regions? So to answer your question, Paul, we have done everything here from a remote standpoint. So myself and Nick, Globalization Partners has been around quite a while in the US, but over here it's pretty new setup. I started 11 months ago. So my whole journey has been remote, and I think Nick started a few months before me. And onboarding, recruiting, building out a team, putting the go-to-market kind of strategy and processes for Europe, all in a remote perspective. And it's been very interesting. And as Nick kind of said there, we had to innovate and work together and really look at all of the different tools and processes that we had. I think from setting up a team and what I'd kind of look back and think the most important question is, are we looking at working the same way as the office, or how can we actually look with a hybrid hat on and kind of look at all of our processes and think how we can optimize them for hybrid working and make sure that it's really inclusive and collaborative. So for my last 12 months, from a marketing standpoint, building out campaigns, the team and everything, that's exactly what I have to focus on. So you really need to leave old habits behind and be really intentional about practices that you have to do from the hybrid standpoint.
There's been a lot in the news this week about new charters being put forward in the UK about people not being forced to go back to offices and that sort of thing. What do you think about those sorts of elements. I think it's got to be an interesting space for you to play, considering what you do. And I think you would agree off the bat that anyone being forced to do things, isn't a good idea. But when you've got employees maybe coming at you, or candidates and that sort of thing, how do you counsel them to figure out which is the right sort of hybrid working for them?
Okay, yeah, well, I think like the looking at that, everyone has different options what works for them. So it's not a one size fits all approach. And I think looking at if you want to go back to the word, like why people want to go to hybrid would be, flexibility, having the best of both worlds, and appreciating diversity. What I think coming out in the news is that it's really important to have, a speak up culture of openness and transparency, and to be listening to what your employees say, so that, culture problems don't come back down the line. You can nip them in the bud. You want to find out exactly what your company, your employees want. But I think another thing has changed over the last while as well, is that, before all of this, the choice was really, or a lot of their decisions were down to the employer. Now, over the last 12 months, we've really looked at, employees now have the chance to design their own life. If you want to work for a company that's entirely on site, you can do that. If you want to work with a company that's entirely remote, that's your choice. So it's really up to the decision of the employee, what their values are and what model works for them the most. So with that in mind, like, they should be able to voice their concerns to their employees. You see, like Tim Cook and Microsoft, he got the letter he got the letter from his employees that they were not happy about coming back to work. 3 days a week from September on. And we do see that more often, because people want to have that flexibility, and they want to have the decision, to make themselves.
And I'd probably just add to that. I think you were referencing potentially, Paul, that this week it was reported that I think it was the Daily Mail said that Downing Street was putting together blueprints which would enshrine and in law the right to work from home forever. And this is obviously something that wasn't correct, and Number 10 have said so. There will not be the law that you can totally and utterly work remote. And I think what will happen is the government will allow employers to decide exactly what happens. So they do need to leave it to the employers, but more than 70% of workers have said that they don't want to return to the office. And I think, from the employer perspective, if they want to retain their staff and if they want to hire good talent, they have to listen to that.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? It's that sort of open dialogue, make sure everyone's got their cards showing on the table and that sort of thing. There are obviously some downsides or challenges with hybrid that people don't really talk about enough, in my thing, and we've touched upon it there, is some people aren't feeling safe, some people like the freedom, some people are more productive away from the office, and that sort of thing. Nick, what are the challenges that we're not talking about enough?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. It's still a very new, brave world when it comes to remote work or hybrid work. And I think those challenges are twofold. It's on the employees and it's on the employers. So let's maybe just start with the employers. Mm-hmm. It's, trying to retain your culture, your DNA, is much more difficult when people are remote. You can't get that social cohesion, that bond with the staff. You can't have the water cooler moments of just finding out how somebody's doing. So it does mean that your team do become a little bit more alienated to the way your business works and your values and your beliefs, and just, generally, what makes the company the company. I think on the flip side, from the workers, if they are remote workers and they want to stay remote, there is unconscious bias that seeps in. So if you take two workers who they're very similar in everything they do and their ability and their experience, and one's in the office and one's not in the office, the one that's in the office is going to be seen more, and there will be that bias. That means that they are thought about more. So when you think about people's performance reviews, you think about promotions, you have to be very careful that you are treating your workers the same. So Yeah, that bias is something that actually I had a great panel session with the chairman of Revolut only 2 weeks ago, and this is exactly what he was saying. In the world of Revolut, this is the problem, because if they still have their management in one core building, they are only going to see certain people coming in, and they are going to there will be some favoritism around that. So there's a lot to think about here.
Yeah, there's that sort of uncommon, them and us feeling that people say, oh, I don't have that, but we haven't experienced it yet, because even though we've done it as a year, most people have been working remotely and not hybrid. I feel like that is something that we're going to have to learn and sort of really be quite responsible to. I think HR will really come into their own with figuring out culture and what that means. Talking about culture, either of you, and that's the thing, what's the biggest thing at the moment that you're seeing that people are getting wrong when it comes to culture, or getting right?
So I'll go first. I'm happy. So culture is an interesting one. So I know I've just preached and said, you do lose a bit of your culture when you're remote. But if you're looking at cross-border hiring, so again, in this brave new world of ours, what we see a lot of globalization partners, customers coming to us saying that, previously they would have hired somebody who was 10, 15 minutes away from the office. Now they're quite happy to look at somebody who could be anywhere in the world. And what that has done is that's made companies embrace culture in a much more dramatic fashion, because you can be hiring people who are around the world. They have different customs, they have different language capabilities. So suddenly you have this great talent pool which you can take from, of individuals that are going to really transform you from, let's say, a UK company. You won't just be a UK focused business, you'll be a global business, and you'll have people all across your company who suddenly bring that rich diversity. So that's certainly a benefit. Suzanne, I don't know if you want to add a few words to that.
Yeah, I think a focus on culture and hybrid is more important than ever. Like inclusivity and collaboration are paramount to success for hybrid. So, from a cultural perspective, there's a few different things that I would look at. There's collaboration, there's recognition, there's connectivity, and there's diversity, and all of these have to be really nurtured in a hybrid role. Like as you said, Paul, there is a split. There's the remote workers and there's the office workers, and we want to make sure that everyone is included. So having the strategy and the actual process to look at each of those separate things. So for example, for collaboration and really encouraging that collaborative culture that people really need in this type of environment, what kind of tools are there to do that? So we have lots of tools here. We're very lucky to have a great tech stack, but things that would spring to mind now would be a lot of our project work would be done through Confluence and Airtable, and it really promotes asynchronous communication so that nobody's left out no matter what time zone that they're at, and this is the strategy for all of the team. Another tool that's, I don't know how people live without, I know I use it all the time, is Slack. But we use Slack for so many different things, one-to-one communications. We use it for, we've got an EMEA Slack channel, a Dublin Slack channel. We use it for, brainstorming and specific programs and events. And this is really collaborative as well. And this is, we have a really good system that makes sure that no matter where you are, everyone knows what's going on, no matter what time zone, and everyone's in the loop. Another thing that's really important for culture would be recognition. So sometimes that's hard to do in a hybrid type of role. So a couple of things that we do here would be, we have this fantastic platform called High Fives. So this is basically if we want to give kudos to anyone, anywhere in the world. So for example, Nick, I might give you a high five later on for thank you for joining me on Future Friday with Paul. And it's a global thing. So you're promoting that, your team building, you're promoting the kudos, you're saying thank you, and everyone's in the loop with that. And also not only having, technology like this, but we have Rockstar Awards. So we're really giving recognition to everyone and different initiatives that they set up. We've got our DFest. So these are really ways that you can promote the culture in different companies, and then obviously what comes with culture is diversity. So making sure that you're promoting your diversity, and this is part of your culture as well. And when you go into, international expansion and hiring the world. So, what we've done in Globalization Partners is we have lots of different Slack channels, as I mentioned. It's a great tool for us. But like, it would be, GP Belongs would be our diversity channel, or we have, Pride Committee for Pride Month. And then it was just little celebrations that, for Patrick's Day, we want to educate all of the team what it's like saying for Patrick's Day. So we do a walking tour, an online kind of walking tour, or, tour of Ireland, or for India when the Diwali was on. So like building that in, getting everyone involved, getting everyone in the loop, including everyone's culture, getting everyone, I guess more, being more culturally intelligent to everyone. That's really important in hybrid. So culture would be one of the big pillars to really focus on if you're looking at going down the hybrid route, and what you can do to make sure that you achieve that.
Let's talk about culture a little bit more for a sec, because I do think it's one of those highly thrown about terms that often the realities of an office, it rarely matches, and that's the thing. It's something you sell at an interview, and then, like you say, oh, we've got a Diwali Slack channel, that's fantastic. For 1 or 2 days a year, how else are we celebrating culture? And that's the thing. When I think about culture recently, I think about the Brewdog controversy and how they've clearly got some issues from a fundamental level there, and that's the thing. One of the things that they used to have was pauternity, which was where they would give time off for people with pets and that sort of thing, which is beautiful, but in reality it's time off, and that sort of thing. And I think there are people on the call that would be interested to hear what you both sort of think about. What are the pitfalls you're seeing that people fall into when it comes to culture? I totally understand that everyone's different and that sort of thing, but I constantly come up against articles, feedback from people that are saying, my company doesn't do X, but it does this, really. It says it does, and that's the thing. How can you get people in this day and age when money's tight and that sort of thing to walk the talk when it comes to culture?
Well, I think like a good example you brought was Brewdog. So the culture of a company, number one, it needs to be rooted from the CEO, and they need to walk the talk. Culture also comes with values. So culture and values of a company need to be, documented and really, like, I guess, led by example. Like the CEO and the leaders of the company need to be walking that talk. So first of all, that's really important. I think, Brewdog culture problems can have a huge harm to business and its brand, and policies and procedures, like for what happened then last week, need to be in place to make sure that everyone knows exactly, if it is a speak up culture, policies and procedures need to be put in place to voice these concerns. So I think, CEOs and the leadership team need to walk the walk. I think at, interview stage, it's actually really important to bring in the culture and the values, and look at, how your candidates, react to questions when you're bringing in what your culture and values are. That's very important from the very start. With the Brewdog, I think, they've had to learn the lesson of, no matter how fast your business is growing, they were speed and action above everything else. They achieved a lot, but really at the expense of their employees. And then James, I see, like, he had to make a public apology there, and he's doing all of the steps that he should have done from the start. So having a culture committee, like, it's a very important part of an organization. So, you should have somebody that looks after that culture. We've got a head of culture and communities, and make that paramount as well. And just that, all of these values and cultures are, introduced at the very start of anybody joining a company, and making sure that they're the right fit too. A two-way fit.
No, definitely. Nick, let's lighten the mood for a bit. It's not all doom and gloom out there. Not everyone's a Brewdog, and some people are doing some really good stuff. What are you seeing that are like positives from early adopters, and what should people who haven't yet adopted hybrid learn from them?
Oh, there's lots of positives. I mean, start with the employer. Having huge offices and having staff traveling all over the world, lots of business expense. A lot of that is now being diminished. And, we at Globalization Partners ourselves, we took out a brand new HQ in Boston just before the pandemic hit. We had the whole place fitted out. And then a decision was made 6 months into the pandemic that we wouldn't need all that space. So we've actually sublet half of that. And I think we're seeing a lot of businesses say, hey, this is good for the bottom line, because we can actually reduce our costs and support what our workers want. From the worker side, they get a much better quality of life. I don't know about anybody else, but I had a 3-hour round trip every day going into office from here in Hampton Court into Camden, and then do a full day and then come back. And that's gone. That's 3 hours of my life that I save on a daily basis. So another great thing I think is flexible working. And what I mean by that is, you have your things you need to do, but now you can pretty much decide on the whole when to do them in the day. It's no longer, get to the office, have a 1-hour lunch break. It's now, okay, you have to get work done, but, maybe you can go and do the school run. I certainly do now on a Thursday and a Friday. If you have sick or elderly relatives that you want to spend time with, again, you can normally fit that into your work life. So it's a much more grown-up way of working for the workers. I think on the flip side, and this is a disadvantage, is some people are a little bit afraid sometimes to actually take that time out. A term I love is digital exhaustion. I think that's so much better than Zoom fatigue. But, we sit in front of our laptops day after day. We have people putting in all of these invites into our calendars. And you just have to learn to block out time and say, actually, I am going to give myself time to do my own things, to look after my own mental well-being. I'm going to make sure I'm eating lunch at lunchtime. I'm not going to be eating lunch at 5 p.m., which, I've seen a lot of people doing. So I think, there is an onus on the worker themselves, but also on the employer to ensure that that individual is actually looking after themselves and they are not being worked absolutely ragged.
Yeah. When it comes to hiring all these people globally, a lot of people obviously, are only starting their journeys to sort of hire people that aren't within an X mile radius of their office. What's the best practice when it comes to sort of that? Obviously, this is your day in, day out. You've been doing it for lots of times, but a lot of people are sort of just starting this. Give us a sort of sense of where people should look.
So, a couple of different lenses on that. You're right. Employers now generally, in the main, are not looking to employ somebody who is, quickly accessible, from their house to the office. The caveat being there are some roles, there are some businesses where they probably do need people to come in on a much more regular basis. But for the whole, you probably can have a worker who is geographically, it doesn't really matter where they are. If it's intra-country, then it can be anywhere. And I say intra-country because one of the considerations, for example, is they do need to be in the same tax domicile. So here it's England and Wales. You can pretty much have somebody working anywhere in England and Wales. If you're looking at the US market, it has to be within the same state. Yeah. If you're looking internationally, then you have to be much more careful because you can't just hire somebody in, I don't know, let's say Paris, and then expect to be able to pay them the same as you pay a worker in the UK. There's many more considerations. You usually would have to have a branch or a subsidiary. You have to have some way of paying their employment taxes. There will be social charges to also look into. So it's a much more complex of way to hire somebody into your business. That said, that is exactly what we do here. We support that because we are the employer of the individual. So we can do all of that. We can pay them in local currency and ensure that they are tax compliant. But the real advantage is you can actually now find somebody to do that job, and they could be based anywhere. And in a lot of cases, they could be based somewhere which is a much lower cost jurisdiction. So we're seeing a lot of developers, for example, that we are hiring on behalf of customers, and they may be in Eastern Europe. So Ukraine, Russia, they are actually great places for cheap developers. They're very gifted. They're actually good workers. And time zone wise, they're not too bad if you're a UK company. But you'll get them for maybe 30% of the equivalents in the UK. So hiring where the best talent lies is something we're seeing a lot of. I think the other thing that we saw in the pandemic was actually people who already work for you and they may want to go back to their country of origin. Maybe, they had family there, for example, but you want to retain them. And again, there's complexity because if they are going to be working in a different country, you can't continue to treat them as if they're a UK employee.
I think there are some realities when it comes to hybrid working and remote working, and that's very remote working, if that makes sense. Not just from a language perspective, but cultural from people. How should employers start to think about those sorts of things before they even hire? You know, do they take a poll? I keep hearing people do questionnaires of their people, like, what do you want? You know, and I think at the moment I'm looking for leaders to sort of lead, but that's just me personally. What do you think people should be looking for in that sort of sense?
Suzanne, do you want to have a go at
Yeah,
this
I
one?
can. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a time and a place for surveys. So if there is an option, if there is an option for your company, then yes, send a survey. If you've decided on the answer that already, be careful with how you send out the communications. I think it's just really important for you to have one-to-one communications with your team all the time, and for people operations to be involved in those conversations, and really listening to your team, not so much maybe going down the survey route first of all, and then taking that feedback and actively looking at what it makes sense for your business and your business plan, and then looking at what route, like what one of the 4 hybrid models that I mentioned at the start is the best fit for your company, and then literally taking a strategy and building out a strategy on what success would look like for that particular model.
Is there any particular advice either of you would have for leaders at this time? Because obviously a lot of people will be asking for advice from their co-workers, like we've just said. Questionnaires, totally acceptable. Any advice of the leaders directly? Because they've probably never had to grapple with something like this.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think this way of working, this new having people work from home, work remote, work internationally, it's here to stay, because that's what the workers want. So no matter how much employers would like to potentially have people in office, if they want to attract the best talent, then they have to understand that they have to allow this type of working. So I think that's the first thing, which is you have to embrace this. So let's not be scared of it. Let's just say, okay, we're going to do this, and what's the best way of doing that? One of the pitfalls that we do see is if you do have a lot of staff that you don't have face-to-face time with, and potentially you don't have a lot of time to talk to them anyway throughout your day, whether that's on Zoom or calls or whatever it may be, is you still have to make sure that they are being supported. And we spoke about wellbeing programs and all that type of stuff, and that's all great, but also just in their current role and what they're doing. So the performance management of the individual is still key. You still need to ensure that they have all of the resources that they need. A lot of workers may not be the type of person who's going to stick their head above the parapet and ask for help. So I think, there has to be a lot of ensuring that you're supporting that worker, being proactive. I think from a leadership perspective, making sure that you are always looking at different parts of the business and talking to the different individuals as well. I loved the old adage of, when you had a retail boss and he would go into all his different shops and talk to the staff, and that was a very successful way to operate. I think that's similar to this, but in a digital fashion. So you do have workers all over the place. Make sure you're getting the time to actually speak to them. And you probably can't speak to every single one, but if you have a management team, you can probably, take that in turns to ensure that you are having those very frank and open discussions with individuals, ensuring that they are happy in what they're doing, that they understand what they're doing, that they have the tools to be able to achieve their objectives, and also just to ensure that from a well-being perspective, that they are in a good place mentally.
You have hit the nail on the head of what I also want to talk about at the moment, and that is called frank and open, honest discussions with people who perhaps are terrified of getting fired, which I find often makes for a very difficult conversation, one that also it's hard to find the sort of truth, if that makes sense. Any advice for people who are managing others, who are perhaps trying to figure out where their heads are at and that sort of thing? When I keep reading data that 40+% of people want to change jobs, that's got to be a concern for a lot of employees and managers of replacing staff, uptraining new staff, and that sort of thing. How can managers and leaders get those open dialogues? A lot of them assume that they're there. I would always say assume that it's not there. Any advice for those sorts of things?
I think it really comes down to, trust and open communication, and transparency, again, the hot word of today. So I think a really good place to start for this would be that for us, we have, objectives, team objectives, and we have individual objectives, and we've got company-wide objectives. So we work on those together every quarter, and we check in, and everyone's comfortable with what their roles are, and empowered to meet those objectives. So I think having that as a foundation, first of all, that if there's any reasons why people are not meeting their objectives, then that's the first place to start the open dialogue and check in. And especially in times like these at the moment, empathy goes a long way. Be empathetic, and be available and visible as well. We're not face to face anymore all the time, but just having that availability, whether it be on Slack or whatever, and checking in. So from our team here, we have a 10 at 10 every morning, which is just 10 minutes FaceTime to say hi and meet your team and maybe talk for a couple of minutes, and just making sure that that people are still chatting to each other, whether it be virtual cup of teas or whatever, and creating fun as well. Like we had our first offsite last week, which was great. But this all comes down to trust, communication, and building that relationship together, so that there is transparency and people feel like they can come to you with any issues or any challenges that they're having. And I don't think that there should be any surprises if there is communications and objectives documented like this in this manner.
Yeah. One thing I'd actually add to that, and this is actually a really, really simple trick, is one of the things we realized since recruiting during the pandemic is, because you're never really meeting any of these new workers, it's the communication is much more 2D. You're not again getting that social cohesion and having those opportunities for them to form their own social networks within the business in a similar fashion. So one of the things we started doing is putting buddies in place. So if someone comes on board, give them a buddy, and that buddy is going to be a peer of theirs. It's not going to be someone they report to or someone more senior. It's going to be somebody that is a personable person who will outreach and check on their well-being, and just by the simple little thing of making sure everyone has a buddy just really helps to gauge and get the temperature of that worker. And if there is anything amiss, then it can be subtly routed back inwards.
Yeah,
I think a buddy is interesting. I think it's sort of always, I want the individual to be able to go up to any member of staff in a business and be like, hey, I've got a thought about X, Y, and Z. Do you have 5 minutes to chat about it? At the moment, I believe and I understand it in several companies that I get to talk with, and that's the thing, that there are layers within that business that are literally looking great on the surface, but they are paddling incredibly fast underwater and that sort of thing. I need to know, when it comes to hybrid working, that is a better solution for people, not just because they hated the job that they were in, but because it's going to create a better sort of future for them, the world, everybody, and that sort of thing. I see a lot of data when people sort of come in about leadership and that sort of stuff, but I also think it's soft skills. Would you agree with that people need to sort of learn new soft skills as we sort of walk into this hybrid world?
So I think one thing that you have mentioned there is there are that situation of somebody coming into a meeting, into any part of the business, and being terribly honest about how they feel, being critical, or maybe it's being positive, but just being laid bare and being able to say what they think. Very few businesses really enable that. I think it's very difficult to get that culture, and it does stem from the top. I would say, I think the business I'm with now, Globalization Partners, we are like that. It's a very motherly culture, and I'll probably get shot down for saying that, but it was an all-female leadership team not too long ago. And I think, that was great because it wasn't very aggressive. It was much more of a family type feel. So I think we do have a culture here where someone, as long as they're respectful, they can actually speak out loud and they can be heard and their thoughts can be considered. That is something very difficult. I think there's a lot of businesses which may not have operated like that. So I would certainly suggest, anybody who is in a leadership position who's listening to this, try to move to that type of environment. If you don't have the skills, or you don't have the people in the business at the top in the leadership who really have that empathy, then find somebody to do that. Bring in somebody who will be that communities person, who will try and get the culture to embrace that transparent, fearless communication. And again, it all comes down to respect. As long as people are being respectful in what they say, they should be able to voice their opinions and say, this is wrong, or why aren't we doing this? And that leads for, I think, a much more honest conversation.
God, I hope we are moving towards that. I really do. I see a lot of young people very frustrated with the way that they're managed and that sort of thing, for rightly and wrongly. You know, you can see why in some, you can't see for others. When it comes to promotions, that's the other issue that people often have with hybrid working, because you get to see some people every day and sort of you experience their work a bit more. When it's remote working, sometimes you don't see that. So I assume that, you know, behaviors like championing work and making a big deal of things would be very, very important. It also causes some people to be less visible, and those people sometimes, depending on where they live, that's socioeconomic and other things like that. How do you recommend that companies make sure that hybrid workers and solutions don't create that them and us scenario?
So you're definitely right. I mean, I think especially now in this remote type world that we're in, you know, we're looking at promotions. I know we spoke about it a little bit earlier, but you know, it's very easy for individuals to get lost because they're not being visible. You know, if that person who doesn't come into an office at all, and you know, they may not have their camera on during Zoom sessions, and they're not very verbose and, you know, contributing into discussions, then it's very easy for them to get forgotten, and that would have an impact when it comes to, you know, the management considering anything from a promotion to performance evaluation. So it's really encouraging that. And again, one of the things we've done internally here is we've insisted, you know, if you're on a Zoom call, have your cameras on. You know, you should be visible. If you're having a team meeting, make sure you have enough time at the end to then go around the call and ask people to contribute. And if you know, you're not getting people willing to contribute, name them. It's not a name and shame thing. It's just trying to get people to be inclusive.
I think it's interesting that I get dinged for that, because I have I think it would be fair to say the members of the TLA group can 100% agree that I have an somewhat aggressive communication style with a lot of people, certainly when it comes to what we should be doing at TLA and that sort of stuff. When it comes to the world of work, I have to really sort of change that and challenge myself to be more inclusive and more sort of gentle in a lot of scenarios and that sort of thing. Not everyone has or responds to my communication style. But I will 100% admit that very few people are trained in other people's communication styles and that sort of thing. And one thing I am seeing is a lot more neurodiversity coming through the ranks, lower and upper. And I think that takes a different sort of management and leadership style. When it comes to hiring for neurodiverse people, how is that going at the moment when it comes to remote working?
I'll begin with this, but Suzanne, you know, feel free to contribute. I don't want to be doing all the speaking. I think, you know, from my perspective, when you are looking at hiring a more diverse pool, it's definitely going to be a change if it's not something that you've done before. I think, you know, there is certainly training that can be done, and we've seen that before. There's a lot of great organizations out there now that can do either, you know, just, you know, 2 or 3 day courses or refreshers, but really understanding that, you know, if you are hiring, especially internationally and, you know, into nations where there are big cultural differences, then you have to be much more understanding as to what those customs are there. So, Suzanne, I don't know if you wanted to add anything particular to that.
Well, I think, yeah, you know, going through the like hiring strategy, I think like it comes down a lot again to just understanding the differences geographically, but making sure that you know, bringing in your values as a company into the interview process is really important as well. But I'm sure, you know, as it's early days, I'm sure there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of more you know, different ways that we can look at recruitment with this focus as well.
And it's interesting you say that, talk about the values piece, because that is one shift that I have seen, which is, you know, interviewing, and I'm sure we all do it on here, we all build our teams. It used to be, I think, much more focused on academic achievements, on prior experience, And nowadays it's more about, what would you be like if you join our company, from a team worker perspective? Will you gel with the team? Are you going to live up to the values? And companies seem to be embracing their core values more now than I think they ever have before. So totally agree with that point.
I think the hybrid future, or the hybrid or the changing work era is really paving the way for, it's not about who speaks the loudest or who is most present, but it's really about the work that you ship. I think that's what we're going to see a lot more in the future. So I guess the advantage of working remotely is that you have the ability to assess the quality of work rather than output by time the chair. So that good work it's the good work that's acknowledged. And this egalitarian culture gives a better chance of equally distributing recognition based on all people. It kind of puts people at more of a level playing field. So maybe people that mightn't have difficulties presenting and socializing compared to other people, it will give them more opportunity for those who prefer to deliver their work asynchronously. So I think that's going to be something that will come out. So it's paving the way for the focus to be on the work that you ship rather than the other two items, who speaks the loudest and who is more present.
I 100% agree. I think the opportunity for a business's culture to be reshaped by a hybrid working, 100%. I think that's bang on the money, because you'll be able to, like you say, see what's shipped, see who's shipping it, and that sort of thing. I also think that because some people are more efficient, you'll be able to often do more in those sorts of scenarios. As the tools sort of evolve and as our sort of education around them sort of increases, again, you're going to start to see these new sort of trends emerge of people being faster at things, more productive, perhaps seeing issues before they arise and that sort of stuff. So definitely think that's going to be interesting. Talk to me a little bit about the actual spaces when it does come to sort of remote and hybrid working. Are co-working spaces dead as a new sort of form going to spring up? A lot of people, do need to actually come together once or twice a year and that sort of thing. It might not all be conference halls. What's that going to look like? Should the office space community be terrified?
Well, I think it depends again on what the perspective is of the business, but the most important point to note about the office space is setting that office space up for success. So in the remote or hybrid model, we've proved that working at home can be super productive, and then the question is, so what is the point of the office, whether it be a micro hub or a WeWork or whatever? And the point is collaboration and getting to know the team. So if it is a WeWork or whatever way you choose it, what does that office fit out look like? How is the space managed? Is that what is it inclusive in this collaborative culture? So it's really looking at the design of the different office spaces, no matter what hybrid role you go for, and making sure that it's set up for success to get people collaborative brainstorming and whiteboarding, whatever the purpose is, to go into the office rather than home. That's the focus for the office space future.
Yeah, no. Oh, sorry, Nick, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think the biggest winner from this is going to be the WeWorks of the world. Just having that co-working space. So moving away from the model of having one big HQ and lots of people in there, and having a much more distributed team, but still being, allowing those teams on a team level to go into a space together, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. So I think, where you have co-working environments, we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I definitely think there are just some logistical issues with a lot of people's places of work that they choose. As fun as it is, we have shown that it can work. However, when it comes to best practices around things like security and living conditions and that sort of stuff, people do not often want to just work at their house and that sort of stuff. So I think those sort of things have to be looked at. Certainly, it's not going to work for a lot of people that require high levels of security. Say, for example, you live in the middle of Mile End, like myself. I know my building here wouldn't be what they call massively secure. please don't come and rob me, anyone. The interesting sort of parts when it comes to the sort of future is how people invest in different sort of technologies. I think when it comes to sort of like professionalism, and this is a question from the audience, and please, if anyone else has one, please just click the hashtag at the top, the blue one, Future Friday. There is a level of professionalism I think that we need to sort of somewhat get back to. You know, we've all been happy living in our PJs and that sort of stuff. Do you think that you know, the future of being interrupted by pets and children, do you think we're going to see that go away and people will come back to professionalism, or do you think we're in a new world of work completely?
You know, I think we're definitely in a much more informal world of work. Again, you know, I don't know about anybody else, but when I go into the office, I usually would put a shirt on and put my cufflinks on and a jacket. Maybe, you know, still have the jeans, but you know, just don't really do that when you work from home. What's the point? There isn't really one. So I think, you know, there is a more informal approach now to work. I think, you know, having the kids there, sure, you know, kids shouldn't be penalized. They shouldn't have to go and hide in a room upstairs. I think it's about balance as well. You have to be respectful to the people that you're talking to. They can't be too distracted by dogs barking and running around. And, you know, occasionally it can be quite funny, you know, having, you know, the Amazon man come to the door and, you know, you have to pop off to get a parcel, but that's life. And I think, you know, we embrace that now.
Yeah, I think like one word that stands out to me would be, you know, it's bringing your authentic self to work, you know, whether you like it or not. You've got the kids, the dogs, whatever. And I actually think that has been really nice over the last while, that you do get a glimpse of what people are like, you know, more than you would usually, and what they're like at home. I don't think that makes them less professional. I think that they're, just being authentic and seeing them in their surroundings, I think has actually been, I've really enjoyed it.
Right. We have a request to take the mic, so I'm going to pass it over to Diwa. There'll be a bit of a delay just as they sort of come up, so I'll do my best to sort of fill that space. But Diwa, please ask your questions succinctly. And you've got Suzanne and Nicole's attention, but you're still connecting, so I'm filling more space. But Diwa, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Maybe not so much a question, but as someone who's been a practitioner in remote work and hybrid, because I'm a translator / interpreter in the United States, I imagine that it just brings better options for people. For example, as I reach my my senior years, I wouldn't want to be commuting to the courts every day when I go to court. I could just, not drive anymore, and I'm here. They do me by Zoom, and that just works better for us. And then those who have disabilities or other abilities, for example, if you're bound to a wheelchair, that's so much better if you're just by Zoom. So that's just my little bit. And also I wanted to bring up the point that artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and more so augmented reality. As I've been going into the rooms, specifically in Clubhouse, they've been discussing these things. More and more of this is going to come into the workspace. Like, for example, we didn't think, and somebody was bringing this up about a week ago or so, that we didn't think that, for example, surgery, a very precise surgery, might be able to use augmented reality. But as they're saying, it's augmented reality as long as they make it more precise. You may be able to do it from remotely, and then someone also, like a mechanic, can do your car, can fix your car with a robot.
Definitely, I agree, Diwa. I think that's a great point that you're making up. Suzanne, Nick, tell us a bit about the options and what this impact will have for people who need accessibility options and that sort of stuff. As Diwa said, disabled folk and less abled. Hybrid working must be a really good option for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this gets to the benefit of everybody. I mean, I can't see a drawback. You always have somebody who wants to be in the office. Who really, that is their social norm. So, for that person, then, okay, we understand that, absolutely. But I think for most of us, we can lead a much higher standard of living if we spend much more time in our home environment with our loved ones. If you are less able, obviously that's going to be hugely helpful as well. And just one other thing I'll quickly mention, which I was going to say when Diwa was speaking, and thank you for that, Diwa. I think another thing that we are going to see actually is a big shift in gig economy. Because if you're not going into an office for a single, certain employer on a day-by-day basis, you will find that individuals will be working from home and they can then start working for multiple employers. So we will see that certainly start to rise. The US does have quite a lot of that happening, and there's a lot of technology that's coming out, especially around the financial side of paying people, in advance or, after a day's work for a different employer. So gig economy plus remote working is going to be a huge area.
Definitely. I've got a question from Terence, who's referring to our earlier point about professionalism and that sort of stuff. He wants to talk about Zoom cameras and how does the team sort of progress without shaming others, if that makes sense. So he feels that parts of it are going to need to be constantly redefined. Do you think that will happen quickly or shortly? And obviously, if anyone else wants to ask any questions, just request the mic. It's the bottom left.
So sorry, what exactly was the question about the Zoom cameras?
The question was, how does the team sort of progress without shaming others, not necessarily into like forcing them to be on camera or oversharing in a space they don't feel comfortable and that sort of thing. Do you think that's going to be constantly redefined, or do you think it's going to, nope, this is the general sort of standard that we'll get to?
Well, I think that, at the moment with the Zoom cameras and, digital burnout and everything like that, everyone is looking at different ways to work. I mean, we're getting used to, the new era of work now, and putting a lot more time into looking at the schedule and making sure that there is a lot more, time that's focused time and not Zoom time all the time, and working asynchronously, collaborating in different ways apart from Zoom. So I think that's going to be a huge part of what we see in the future as well, and how that kind of pans out, not be completely, always working in Zoom and on camera, because I think that we're seeing some negative aspects coming from that.
God, I hope so. I think people need to learn that not everything needs to be a Zoom call, and that's something I'm definitely pushing my clients to understand as well.
We did actually do, just on a funny note there, we did actually do a webinar with the Financial Times on last week, and a company called Avella, and they have a system which is like virtual reality, and they're going back to kind of what Diva was saying, but they use everything. Now, I don't know if we'll do this ourselves at Globalization Partners, but everything is avatars. So it's virtual reality, all hands, virtual reality offices, and it's avatars. They use avatars all the time. So it's actually really interesting, like just to go on their website and see what their product is like, because that might be something that people look into in the future as well. But it's definitely the way the world is going, like with these new products coming out.
Definitely. We have put up on YouTube the first Future Friday with Tracy Follows, who talked exactly about that, the future of identities and digital worlds, and that could be the future of world as well, future of work as well. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Final sort of bit of advice from both of you, if that's possible, that you've never given anyone for companies for the next 24 months when it comes to hybrid remote working.
I think that one of the advice that I'd say to start off with is you have a strategy when you're going into hybrid remote working. Actually pan out what that looks like from a culture perspective, from a workflows perspective, and from a leadership perspective. What you need to address in these areas, and what you need to document and communicate to your team. Also from a hybrid nature, obviously, looking at different types of solutions, like Globalization Partners or EOR as a solution. This is huge, and for companies, I think it's been proven for the last while that we really need to be flexible, and this flexibility can offer business resilience in times of crisis. So just to look at these types of solutions when you want to hire the world, and they'd be my main two advice for the future.
Okay, Nick?
Well, more of the same of what we've really said. So I think if you do have this distributed workforce, just really being cognizant that you need to check in on them and make sure that you're doing that in a respectful way. I think your eyes and ears of the leadership team should be across the workforce. Make sure that you are paying due attention to them and giving them the support they need, and ensuring that they are not exhausting themselves and working themselves ragged. But also being brave. I mean, I think this new world gives so many great opportunities for you to start looking for workers anywhere in the world. Look at opening the new markets potentially as well, because I think what we will see is that traditional idea that you have to have somebody in country to be able to head up your business there. Well, I would say, do you actually need to have somebody in that country? They could be anywhere. I think as long as they, get over the language and time barriers and so on, this new world really is going to be borderless.
Yeah, I think more and more we're just going to start seeing a lot of the old behaviours and a lot of the old assumptions sort of crumble away. I hope I hope it doesn't take too long to sort of get there. I think the potential for hybrid working to rejig the world, power structures, and that sort of thing, bang on. It fills my heart with glee that you guys started a company that was led by women, because I think you're going to be better off for it long term. That's what all the data continues to sort of show, and I urge more people to get women up in senior leadership. It's a very smart move, certainly not just from soft skills, but also leadership roles and pushing strategies forward. Like Suzanne says, you do need a good one to sort of start with. All right, that is our time, I'm afraid. Thank you both for being lightly grilled. It's not an easy subject, actually, when you get into the details, but you're clearly helping companies forge the way through, starting new ways of working and that sort of thing. What's the best way that people can contact you if they want to know more?
It's through the website, absolutely. So that's Globalization-Partners and globalization with a Z.com. So you can come through there. Otherwise, on LinkedIn, you'll find both Suzanne and myself, and we're always happy to jump on a call or provide you with any advice.
Amazing. Thank you ever so much for that. Okie doke. Right, folks, that was Tech London Advocates Future Friday Lunch and Learn session with this moi, Paul Armstrong. From here forth, drop me a DM and let me know what you thought. And if you would like to join GTA, we're always looking for members. And we're also actually looking for another pair of hands when it comes to content and social. So if you know anyone or you are that person, please do get in touch and I will make it worth your while. Check out techlondonadvocates.org.uk if you want more information about TLA in general, or hit me up and I will send that to you as well. I will see you back here in August. We're going to have July off because I'm doing Mouthwash, which is another season of the show that I did, and this season's all about power, so a lot about the future of work I'm sure will be involved there. I've just put up the YouTube channel for the TLA as well. So if you want to check out the previous show that we did with Tracy Follows, which was all about the future of your digital self and the future of work, that's up there as well. So do check that out. Thanks again both to you for your time and being so honest. I appreciate that no end. So yeah, I can't thank you enough. I will close this space in a second. But what I will do as well is just remind everybody we will be back in August, not July. So don't set your alarms for that one. But yeah, join TLA. It's been an amazing hour. And thank you again, both Nicholas and Suzanne, for your time. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.